There's been a lot of rumors about child actors in Hollywood recently. What do you make of all that?
This is an interview with Brett Cooper and Jordan Peterson, where she exposes some dark Hollywood secrets. We're going to listen to it, and then I'm going to share my thoughts.
Well, it's all true.
So what did you escape unscathed?
I did. I would say I saw a lot of it.
What did you see?
For example, I worked on a children's TV show on a major network. And one of the writers, after we wrapped on the show, after the show was canceled, had incredibly inappropriate relationships with young women like me who were on the show. Young women in my...
How young?
14.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, this was not sexual, but it was objectively grooming. It was inappropriate relationships between an adult and minors because Hollywood goes ahead and it blurs the lines between what is appropriate between adults and children because you're working with adults constantly.
Right.
My entire life. My entire childhood, I spent more time with adults than I did with children. My management team, they were all adults, obviously. Agents, managers, directors, casting directors, producers, wardrobe assistants. You're surrounded by adults constantly. Writers, in this case. And those lines get really blurred. So if a writer on a TV show that you worked on invites you and one of your co-stars out to lunch to talk about another TV show that he's working on, your parents go, oh, okay, yeah. Well, you've worked with him for 2 years at this point. Let's take you to lunch. And then you're sitting here with this girl who's a year older than you, and he starts talking about the lesbian fantasies that he has about you and your friend. Like that's nothing happened, but that's the fact that he thought that was appropriate. The fact that
that's a testing behavior.
Yeah. And then the fact that later we're walking around the restaurant and he puts his hand in my friend's back pocket, who's 15 years old. And I was just, I'd get me out of here. Completely inappropriate.
This is some dark stuff. And if you look into this, it gets even worse, sadly. Listen to this article for reference. In 2019, the vice president of a company, Michael Langley, was arrested on the basis of repeated SA involving a 7-year-old girl. Michael was 73 at the time of this arrest and had been working for this company for decades. After his sentencing, others came forward to admit that they too had been abused by him. Unfortunately, there was not enough evidence to prove these claims. Michael, however, is not the only person from this company arrested for SA or pedo. In 2018, another actor from this company, Stormy Westmoreland, was sentenced 2 years in prison for crimes with a minor. He was caught sending pornographic photos and attempting to lure a 13-year-old boy to a hotel with him. Within the past year, 4 employees of this company have been arrested during a human trafficking bust in Florida. This issue of pedo and SA are not new problems for this company. In fact, a 6-month investigation in 2014 showed that at least 35 of this company's employees have been arrested since 2006, all on accounts of SEG crimes involving children, attempting to lure minors in for SEG and for possession of child pornography. This is dark. This stuff has been coming out. There's also a docuseries out exposing this type of stuff. It's called Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV. You should go check it out. Be definitely enlightened. It's sad how the enemy seeks to target our children and prey on them. That's why, as parents, we need to be protectors. Because it's pure wickedness to pervert the innocence of children. Listen to what Jesus says about leading children astray. In Matthew 18:5-6, it says, "Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and be drowned in the depth of the sea. There's going to be a judgment for people that have no regard for innocent children.
How many of the young people in Hollywood are sold into that, so to speak, by their parents? Now, you characterized your mother as someone who was loath to take you on the Hollywood adventure. But there's no shortage of parents. Is it more common among mothers? Probably.
Yeah.
The cluster B type mothers who use their children to their own advantage, come hell or high water. Jazz Jennings, for example, springs to mind, right, in the most brutal and horrible possible manner, right? But you can see a lot of this on social media. You know, parents pimping out their children, transforming them as well, you know, and then proclaiming their moral virtue in consequence of the transformation. You know, my child is very, very deviant, but I'm such a wonderful person that I still love them deeply. Right.
But it was them in the first place that pushed them in that direction in the first place. And then
you might say so.
Yeah. And I think another example, did you read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy?
No, I haven't read it.
Fantastic. And that I think is the most incredible example of what a lot of these younger people. Jeanette McCurdy. She's from iCarly.
Jeanette,
yes.
You haven't talked to her on your podcast.
No, I have not. I believe she talked to Michaela.
Okay.
It was just an incredible book. I remember I read it last year when it came out, and I was just tears reading it, because these are the stories of the people that I grew up with. They're the things that I saw but was protected against. My mom was very wary about me being involved in this industry, and she was a shark. She set firm boundaries. She was always watching. She was always within eyeshot.
Right. So you had a guardian.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And the other thing that I think was incredibly important that she did was, again, like I said, I had so many other things going on in my life, so my identity was not wrapped up in this industry. I never connected it to money at all, because my money was put in savings accounts. My parents never touched it. My mom never touched it. The state takes 15% of whatever a young actor makes and puts it into your Coogan account. So if you are in a situation where your parents are exploiting you, at least by 18, you have some money. Never touched any of that, and never wanted me to connect Hollywood and making money. Because I would she saw people in my circle, these kids, they would, do an episode on a TV show, and then their parents would go out and buy 6 American Girl dolls, and they would buy a fancy new car for the family. And, the parents would take a huge vacation that the kid at 8 years old paid for.
Right.
And my mom always wanted to ensure that I stuck in this industry because I loved it, because I couldn't live without it, because I loved telling stories. And at least once a month, she would say, are you sure you want to do this? Because if you ever want to stop, we'll stop. I don't care how much money we've invested in your acting classes and your dance classes. If you want to stop, if you want to go home, we'll pack up and move to Tennessee.
What made her so sensible?
She's just a brilliant woman. She's incredible. She's one of the most resilient people I've ever met. She has been to hell and back a million times. Her first husband passed away. Her child then passed away. My older brother, in light of my brother's passing, has severe mental illness. He's permanently in a psychiatric facility for schizophrenia. Very, very hard marriage with my father. Very, very hard upbringing, where she was often the black sheep. She is very comfortable being non-traditional and doing things that would be considered unconventional in whatever circumstance she's in.
How did you end up with traditional values then?
Because she's very traditional. But I realized that as I said that, I contradicted myself.
Well,
she is willing to be unconventional in the given circumstances. So in Hollywood,
so she's daring.
She's daring. And the majority of people that we were surrounded by, where parents were pushing their kids into this, she was willing to be the one that says, no, my kid is not doing that. My kid isn't doing this kind of project. My kid is not going out for this project that is run by a producer that we know has, a bad track record. She was incredibly involved.
Right. Well, so fundamentally, the case you're laying out, it's always useful to look at situational determinants of unfortunate outcomes, let's say. And, the first thing you said was, well, there are kids working with adults, and so the lines are blurred. And okay, so that sets the stage.
Yeah.
And then you can imagine that within those relationships, there's no shortage of people always whose ability to obtain intimacy, like in a relationship or sexually, is like stunningly compromised, right? And so those people at minimum are going to, like, just as a consequence of their inability, are going to be looking for opportunity and maybe not even that good at distinguishing an appropriate from an inappropriate opportunity. And then there's the ones that are really bent because they're resentful and because they're isolated. They're actually looking for innocence to subvert and destroy. Those are the more people who tilt more in the explicitly narcissistic and sadistic direction. And your circumstance was such that you had a mother who was watching out for you. And so that instead of a mother who was complicit and exploiting you.
Who turned a blind,
Now, you said you had a growth spurt when you were, how old, 9?
Yeah.
So how physically mature were you by the time you were 14?
Relatively. I always looked older for my age.
Yeah. That's another thing that blurs the lines, of course,
it is.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you're around adults and you learn to act like an adult, you're going to also present yourself, in a more mature manner.
Yeah. And if you physically look like one. I mean,
Well, that's...
It makes it very, very complicated. However, it just shouldn't
What did
be
you
complicated.
do, do you think, that... So often girls, bully victims in general, girls who are subject to exploitation are not very good at subtle signaling. They don't know how to say no. They don't know when to say no. They don't know how to broadcast no.
Yeah.
Like right from the initial interactions, right? So how do you think you conducted yourself so that, because I know you said your mother was protecting you, but did you conduct yourself so that nothing got going?
Yeah.
Okay, how?
I would say just intrinsically, I'm very self-aware and have been for a long time. And I think that is because I had to grow up very quickly in terms of my family. I was just very aware of everything that was going on.
You also said you didn't want to cause trouble.
Yeah.
Unnecessary trouble.
Yes, unnecessary trouble. But I don't think that means that I was not willing to stand up for myself, because in situations that were this severe in terms of my safety, my innocence. Anyway, I think that I was very self-aware. And then it goes back to my mother. Again, when we moved out to Los Angeles, she knew everything, all the rumors about Hollywood, the casting couch. She put me in women's self-defense against sexual assault classes when I was 10. And I did those classes until
And that was useful?
The most incredible thing I've ever done. Hands down. I was put in situations, I started out doing group classes, and you learn how to fight against a male opponent that is bigger than you. Because you can do jujitsu, you can do karate. I think that those disciplines are incredible. They often do not translate to real world fighting for women.
Yeah,
specifically.
Right, of course.
Women, we hold our strength in different parts of our bodies. When you are dealing with an assault, there are, situational awareness is so important. Your voice is so important, just being able to scream no.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And so, I was put in situations in these classes where, a man comes up behind you, my instructor comes up behind you, holding a knife to your throat, knowing how to get out of that, holding a gun to your head. You are on the ground.
So you at least were run through situations.
I was run through, but I think...
This situation you described in the restaurant, where this writer, I think you said was a writer, slipped his hand into the back pocket of your friend.
Yes.
You said she was a little older than you?
Yeah, she was 16.
Why didn't he do the same thing to you?
He tried to, and I moved away. And I said, that's weird, don't do that.
Okay. Did she do that?
No.
Okay, so
that's the perfect example of what you were just saying.
That's exactly my point. Those are the micro no's that stop things from proceeding.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and
I credit a lot of that to these classes that I did.
Yeah.
Because as you said, and as you brought up again, I was unwilling to rock the boat. I was a doormat in my family. And still, that's something that I'm still working through as an adult now. I'm being very, very nervous about that in my immediate family, just because of the way that I was
raised. Are you an
raised.
agreeable person? Do you like to please people?
I do.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
And
you can also see the complexity, because if you're an entertainer and you're on the stage, you're obligated as part of your role to be magnetically attractive, charismatic, and all of that, and to capitalize on that. And so drawing the line, Marilyn Monroe, she said she could walk down the street as Norma Ray? Norma Jean, or as Marilyn, right? And if she walked down the street as Norma Jean, no one paid any attention to her. But if she walked down the street as Marilyn Monroe, then she was magnetically attractive, right? And so those are obviously, well, she was a master of that seductress role. She's still iconic because of that. And it's like 70 years later. That's really quite something. And it certainly destroyed her, right? Because that was too much. Well, if you're an actor, an actress, then you have this conundrum, because you're rewarded for your attractiveness. You're capitalizing on your attractiveness. You're among adults, but you have to hem that in so that you're not exploited. Right? Well, when exactly are you being exploited, and when exactly are you exploiting yourself? It's not like that's obvious. So it's a very good thing that you had your mother along with you. The courses too, that's interesting, because you were at least placed in frightening situations, and you were at least alerted to the fact that those sorts of things existed.
Exploitation. That's the perfect way to describe what we're hearing from this. Truly a disturbing thing that people are willing to exploit their own children at the expense of their sanity, their healthy development, and safety. What we're talking about is an extreme, but this happens every day on a smaller scale. This is a lot of so-called family U channels that are exploiting their children. You see this on Instagram. You see it on TikTok. People willing to sacrifice their kids at the altar of wealth. Personally, I don't even like putting pictures of my children online. Me and my wife, we do it very sparingly. And thinking about this, I'm reminded of an account in the Bible with King Herod and Herodias. Herodias was Herod's brother's wife, and they had an affair and got married. And John the Baptist, he knew of this, and he was judging Herodias of her sins. So she didn't like John, and she wanted John to get killed. So she entices her daughter to dance for Herod, because there was this ritual that if you pleased him, then he would grant you with whatever you asked. So Herodias has her daughter do this, and her daughter pleases Herod, and she has John the Baptist beheaded. Now you can imagine what this girl had to deal with, knowing she had a part to play in that. And then imagine these kids exploited and what they go through after this crazy stuff that they see and are forced to be a part of in Hollywood. That's why a lot of them end up emotionally and mentally unstable and on drugs. You know, I know it's hard sometimes to draw hard lines, but this is one of those things that we should not tolerate, and we shouldn't support these people, these evil people, by giving them our money so that they can continue to do this. How can we even trust people like this to produce wholesome entertainment for our kids? Guess what? They don't. Their movies and entertainment is full of innuendos and subliminal messages. But I'll save that for another day, for another video. Hey, I hope you liked that video. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Like, share, and subscribe. Check out this next video that YouTube is recommending for you to watch. And remember, we all have a mind, but there's no better mind than the mind of God. Peace.